Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast, the platform where inspirational leaders from the tech, digital and business world share their insights, experiences and learnings. I'm your host, Sandra Patel, and I'm thrilled to bring you conversations with some of the brightest minds and most passionate leaders in the industry from across the world. Whether it's about navigating challenges, driving innovation, or building diverse and inclusive teams, this podcast is all about learning from the very best. Each episode is an opportunity to hear real stories of success, personal growth, and how our guests are giving back to the community. And it's also a chance for me to learn right alongside you. So get ready to be inspired, motivated, and equipped with the knowledge to take your leadership journey to the next level. Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. So today we have the lovely Minoti, founder of TPL Experiences, a values-led consultancy firm specialising in strategy development and training programmes focusing on improving health, well-being, resilience and engagement. Hi Minoti, how are you?
I am good, Sandra. How are you?
Good. I'm very good, thank you. Very good for a Monday, anyway.
As good as you can be.
Exactly. So I'm just going to set a little bit of the scene and purpose, and then I'll jump into some questions. So in this episode, we aim to explore your inspirational journey. I've heard about, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about today and sharing with our listeners and viewers. And obviously, you had a difficult move here from India to the UK. So it'd be great to share the challenges that you faced along the way and throughout that journey. In this conversation, I think we're going to delve into more around how you've overcome some of those rejections, how you integrated into new communities, and how you really kind of embrace networking to drive your personal and professional success. So we'll move on to just to, I guess, set a bit of the scene, a bit more for the scene and context for our listeners and viewers. So obviously we've spoken in the past about you moved from India into the UK 8 years ago, I think it was now.
Yeah.
I bet now it feels like it's flown by, doesn't it? But I bet it didn't at the time.
No, it did not at all. I think the number of times I kept thinking about should we just go back, or what was this whole idea about moving and all of that. But
Oh
obviously, I think
yeah.
those thoughts have now become a distant memory, which is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely.
8 years does feel like a long time now.
Oh, I can imagine. So it was quite a challenge for you. So it'd be really interested
Yeah.
if you could share more about that challenge and that kind of, I guess, the initial rejection that you faced
Yeah.
and what that taught you and how you found the strength to keep pushing on and to get to where you are today.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I would love to. I think firstly, I guess to set the scene, I would say
Hmm.
that I was not thinking or anticipating that all of my years of global experience would, just become this amazing value piece for me when I land into this country. And I wasn't at all expecting that there will be a line of people queuing up and wanting to sign me up. So just to set that right. So I was very clear that when I was in discussions about my move, I was very clear that I would need to let go of a lot of success and recognition in order to find new space for learning and growth. However, in capital, I wasn't expecting this level of rejection, like outright, no, thank you, from everyone and anyone I met, because I somehow assumed that coming from where I came in terms of the experience, not necessarily the country, but in terms of experience, I was quite confident that it would at least add up to something of at a level where at least people want to have a conversation with me. Whether or not that leads to something is is a different picture. However,
Mm.
when I moved here, I just felt like people were not even willing to give me that chance of even having a conversation with me, which was a massive shock to the system. I wasn't
Oh, I can
ready for that.
imagine.
Uh,
Not very nice to deal
yeah,
with either, is it?
yeah. And obviously, I guess along with that, along with the professional acknowledgement or lack of acknowledgement, you're also dealing with a hundred and other things around being culturally, getting yourself more culturally in tune and in sync with the culture of this land in terms of
Yeah.
everything from the way you dress to the way you speak to the everything, the way you travel, the way you shop. So all that aside, professionally, it was very, very challenging because the people who I met were not at all. I guess there was a lack of creativity in terms of people understanding how one's competency or skills from another profession or another country could be actually transferable and used in some other context. I think there was just a lack of that creative thinking, which
Mm.
obviously meant that a lot of people kind of, I heard all sorts from, you'll be better off in India, or your accent won't work at all, or you are coming in a very saturated market. What would a person like you do in this country? So when you listen to this constantly,
Jesus.
you actually start believing maybe they are right.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe they make more sense. So I think that whole journey really taught me the importance of, very simply put, of being resilient, of being
Mhm.
absolutely um, strong in your head, which is not easy at all. When you're after every third call, you're kind of crying in the bathroom and be like, why did I do this? Um, you have to learn how to cope with that level of rejection and failure. And strangely, in a very strange way, I feel all those rejections has really helped me in my professional growth. It sounds like, oh well, you're just putting like a nice little lining to it. But to be fair, it has. And I think all
Mhm.
that level of rejection really helped me build my own resilience, which I feel has come in very handy now because I work a lot with building resilient cultures and resilient teams and resilient
Mhm.
communities. I think all those personal lived experiences have kind of kept adding on in that jar of resilience. And I think like it's all kind of come to good use now. But obviously back then, um, it was I was miserable, completely honestly.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, and you've done extremely well pushing on and moving forward and finding that resilience and strength and building upon it. So I can imagine, yeah, it's not easy. So you've all during that
Oh,
time and you've continued to do so from my understanding. You became really deeply involved in networking and community building
yeah.
here in the UK, which is fantastic. I'm all for community building. How did that? Yeah, how did you start that? How did you start integrating into these communities, particularly given the challenges that you faced, and what role has that played in your personal and professional success to date?
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a lot of trial and error that needs to happen to find your tribe,
Yeah.
so to say. Um, I think when I started with the business idea about 7 years back, I had an empty contact book. I did not know anybody. Like, I did not even have a friend who I could say, "Do you know
Wow.
I've got a business idea? What do you think about it?" So I didn't even have
Gosh,
that.
it's a
So,
lonely place anyway, isn't it?
exactly.
Being the founder and yeah.
Exactly. So
Gosh.
I think I had to very much start from the absolute scratch level. And what I did was I basically went on LinkedIn. I don't think LinkedIn was such a big deal back then, but I did
Mm.
have a LinkedIn account. And I remember typing in the words enterprise and leads just to know, like, who do I go to? Whose door do I knock? And I remember the first name that popped up was the professor of entrepreneurship in the University of Leeds, Dr. Nigel
Mhm.
Lockhart. And I very randomly sent him an in-mail. You were allowed like 3 free in-mails at that point. I random Lacanian male being like, hello, I'm new to Leeds. I think I've got a business idea. What do you think? Can I meet you? And I remember him replying in like just 5 minutes, be like, I don't know who you are. We don't have any common connections, but I want to meet you just to congratulate you for your courage to message me.
Oh, that's nice.
And
And I
it's
bet you were just
literally.
like, oh my God, I'm just so pleased to get a reply.
And this person was actually nice to in the reply as well. He wasn't being
Yeah.
rude, he wasn't being condescending. And so I met him, and basically, I think my journey into integrating myself started from there because he introduced
Hmm.
me to a network. I attended it, and then from there, I got to know, okay, there were other networks. The thing that I realized was that I didn't feel like I was the right fit in every room that I entered.
Hmm.
um, and I don't think it's a very personal sort of a journey. I think each one of us, regardless of our experiences, we might fit into some rooms better than
Yeah.
the others.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the important thing is to give it a try, give it a go, just see how you feel.
Absolutely.
I think you also start developing your own mechanisms of kind of creating your own personal boundaries. At least I felt that initially when I was networking, was that people would say all sorts of things to me in terms of, just like, oh, I went to this curry place, and that's all that they would talk about to me. And I'm like, what? Why are you talking to me about a curry place? I am not here to talk about a curry place. And I think you kind of have to navigate through those because it's not like
Mhm.
they're trying to be rude or anything, but they've kind of
No.
very conveniently boxed you up.
I think, yeah, that's it. That a lot of people just think it's like an easy kind of common ground to like, and I guess you just got to try to be thick-skinned and not take those things personally, which can be quite challenging and difficult sometimes.
Exactly. I, it's like, but why? Why am I talking about? I don't like curries that much. I am an Indian. I'm very proud of it, but it's not my thing. But anyway,
Yeah.
I think you kind of have to you kind of have to create your own coping mechanisms
Hmm.
about how do you navigate through these tricky, patchy situations and actually try to get value out of being in that room.
Yeah.
And I guess as a standard rule, I always think like for every 5 people you meet who are condescending, who've boxed you up, who've generalized you, you'll always meet 2 or 3 really kind-hearted
Hmm.
souls who genuinely respect you and value you for who you are as an individual and what you bring to the table. So I think you'll always find a mix. I still till date find that. I'm pretty sure you find that as well, Sandra, in all the networks you are a part of, that
Yeah.
you'll always have a mix of people. um, but as long as you keep showing up and as long as you meet everybody with kindness and
Hmm.
sort of integrity, you're
Mm.
doing fine,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, no, absolutely. Great advice, and that's it. I think you just need that one initial kind of breakthrough, and then it tends to just kind of spiral from there, doesn't it? Which sounds like what happened with yourselves. So, I'd like to move on to that rejection piece a little bit more now. It's something that we all face professionally and personally, and it's something that many people really fear.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've experienced quite a lot of that for quite a long time. What advice would you give to those people who are facing setbacks, especially when entering new environments like you did, or trying to build that community presence, their personal brand, a new business? You've done all of those in one, haven't you, in one
Yes.
go? So yes, I'd be really interested in your advice there.
Yeah, I think for me, I would definitely say the advice that helped me was that I needed to meet myself where I was. I needed to have that honest conversation with myself about what I'm feeling, why I'm feeling this, and what do I want to do with these feelings. Because it's very easy to feel very bogged down and overwhelmed by this constant feeling of rejection, this constant fear that you're not going to make it anywhere. But I think if you meet yourself and your circumstances and you're honest about it, then you
Hmm.
know that, okay, I am here and this is the absolute rock bottom that I can ever be at. What do I do from here? How do I get going? So I think meeting yourself and having that honest conversation allows you to basically get out of your own way, because a lot of the things that were coming to me in my head were very much kind of having a bit of a negative impact on my self belief and my self confidence. But I was actually, in my own way, unknowingly, just basically being an obstacle to myself, where I constantly was taking all this feedback in and actually making it facts and realities when it was just opinions of people and experiences. So I think if you meet yourself, if you have that honest conversation and you get outside out of your own way, you'll realize that the only person in the entire damn world who can help you the most is yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So
it's a tough one though, isn't it?
it
Because,
is.
it's that saying, isn't it? Like easier said than done. Like it
Yeah,
is really tough and it requires, I found, I've faced quite a bit of rejection, particularly over the last couple of years, and I just find that it's something that you need to be consistent with. It's like almost like a daily practice or routine that you need to continue to do. Otherwise, I think that it can really get on top of you and be really difficult to manage.
abs-
Yeah, sounds
absolutely.
like you did a
I
great
think,
job.
but it was a process. I don't want to kind of say that one fine day I had this thought.
No,
It's a very slow process. It's very much. I think it's important to not be harsh on ourselves
yeah,
if we
it's
get
not
those self
putting too
doubts.
much pressure on ourselves,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned as well that you've also worked with charities and helped build communities, which is amazing because you obviously got to a point where you'd faced all the rejections, you didn't know anyone, you didn't have any friends here. So to go from that to a position where you're helping to build communities and supporting charities, is absolutely amazing. So how has giving back shaped your leadership style and sense of belonging in the UK, do you think?
I think it's safe for me to say that giving back and building communities has pretty much transformed my entire being and my entire existence,
Um,
personally and professionally. And I wish I could say that, oh, it was a very strategic move and all of that, but it was very organic. I think my love for giving back to communities started way back when I was a kid in Mumbai in India as well, and I used to do a lot of community work back there. So when I got a chance, again, very organically through my dance practice, to actually start working with the community and who were individuals who had a lot of sort of physical disabilities, etc., but I had to teach them movements to enable them to feel slightly better about themselves.
yeah.
It was like an introduction to a whole new world that I'm so grateful that that happened, that experience
Mm-hmm.
happened, because what that allowed me to do is that it allowed me to actually personally feel like I exist, and I'm not
Giving you a
just,
purpose.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm not just an immigrant, or I'm not just an Indian, Asian,
Who
whatever
likes
tag.
tourists?
Yeah, that too. I swear I'm going to get a lot of backlash for that comment. but um, but I think it definitely gave me a sense of purpose, but it also actually allowed me to step out of all the boxes that I was constantly being put in.
Hmm.
And I think that there was a sense of freedom that I felt in just working with these communities. For me, it was a very like getting to grassroots level and starting from that level, which in hindsight has really changed my perspective about everything in terms of
Yeah.
inclusion, in terms of equity. I know we talk a lot about these terms, and we've got conferences and events about it, but what inclusion and equity actually mean, you've got to go to that grassroots level, spend
Hmm.
time, and actually experience what everybody in the community experiences to actually fully understand what that really means. And I guess from a personal point of view, it enabled me to really have that sense of purpose, but also feel like I am, regardless of being an outsider, I am actually a valuable
Mhm.
individual to
Yeah.
my community. And then obviously professionally, what happened again very organically was that it put me in a very unique position in terms of my expertise, because I started with sort of global experiences working with big corporates, started working with NHS, local council, SMEs, and then communities. So I guess the lens with which I looked at every problem statement was very diverse, very different,
Yeah. Mm.
and in a very beautiful way, it really added to my professional growth as well, as an entrepreneur, as a consultant, and as an artist as well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. What over the last sort of 7 or 8 years, you've obviously had I'm sure there's things that you would have done differently, but overall, it sounds like there's been a lot of learnings along the way. What would you say is your best bit of career advice that you take from that to offer other people that are in sort of similar situations to where you were?
Yeah, I think, to be very fair, I feel like career advice keeps changing every 6 months. But as a standard universal advice, I would say that I think it's very, very important for us to acknowledge that if you have a choice to choose a career path, that itself is a privilege. Not
Mhm.
everybody has it.
Mm.
And so I think it's very important for us to acknowledge that if you've got a choice to actually choose your careers, there in itself, you've got a privilege that you want to use. And I think the second advice or piece that I feel has really helped me is that I've always analyzed what does success look like to me, and then decided what's important for me. um,
Mhm.
I think very often we can get into a bit of a checklist sort of a space where, we want to have our first job at a certain age, and our first car at a certain age, and our first house at a certain age. And then we kind of, that checklist dictates the decisions that we make in our career. And so basically, what you're doing is you're allowing some society norm to
Mm.
dictate how you decide what matters to you and what doesn't. So I would just pause there and really reflect on what does success look like to me, and then go about making those choices and decisions about my career. As long as it's coming from you, you're
Yeah,
doing okay.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, and quick question, actually, it's a little bit off piece. I just
No, it's fine.
something I don't know what it is. Something just triggered this whilst you were talking. Then, around kind of planning your milestones and kind of working back from there. Someone just it was I can't even remember for the life of me. It was a conversation I had the other day with someone, and they were talking about how they had some away days booked in, and I think it's a single kind of business owner, founder, entrepreneur. I'm sure it was a female entrepreneur founder. And I thought about that, and I thought, you know what, I never do that. And I
Mm,
always feel like I'm constantly like there's just never enough time in the day to do the thinking, the planning, the like the stuff that you really need to probably remove yourself from your everyday environment and surroundings. So it'd be interesting actually on your thoughts, especially given what you do for a living. What your thoughts around I guess away days and daytime to yourself, and how best what's the best use of that time for what advice would you give to others around the best use of that time?
yeah, funnily enough, I started this practice just 2 years back, Sandra.
Oh,
I
okay.
take about three
Maybe it's
days
not too late
away.
for me then.
No, it's not. I take about 3 days away for me, just to
Oh, wow.
strategize about the business. And I generally do it over a weekend because that's the only time I can really afford because the
Yeah.
husband is taking care of the child, etc. But I think that has really helped me understand a lot more and dive deeper into myself as well. So
Uh-huh.
along with the business, I think it's very important to have that time away, even if you are in a sort of a job and you're an employee in an organization. I think it's really important for you to just have those 2 days off laptop screen time and
Mm.
just do something that you like. I think what I realized when I did the first time round was that I had psyched myself to believing that I'm going to have these massive vision board ideas and these real creative light bulb moments, and none of that happened. you know,
Well,
so I
that's the
think
thing. That's what's always put me off, because I think, well, it's just a day. It's a day out, and then what if nothing comes to me, and it's like I've lost a day of work.
And I think that's probably what I went in with in the first year that I did it. I
Yeah.
didn't have any light bulb moments, and I was absolutely like devastated that this was not the best use of my time. But but I think what it did was it just allowed me to just not think, and in that
Yeah.
stillness, there is great power.
Mm.
So you may not come out of this 2 day expedition with these brilliant ideas, but as long as you've used those 2 days just to clear your head out,
Mm.
it is going to have value in your life. You are going to
Yeah.
be a lot more productive, a lot more sure about you in some shape or form. So definitely do it, but definitely don't also set very high unrealistic expectations like I did in year one.
Yeah. 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 No, fantastic. And actually, it probably leads me nicely on one of the other questions I was going to ask you around work-life balance. What does it mean to you?
um I must say that work life balance did not exist in my life till I moved here. Because as a culture in India, I think being a workaholic is
Mm.
really considered like
It's
it's
expected, isn't it?
exactly,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Yeah.
oh well, you're doing well then, if you're being a workaholic and you're working. I think because of the line of work that I was in, I used to travel a lot in multi
Yeah.
cities, multi countries.
You're probably working unsociable hours as well, by the sounds of it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I was with my laptop on airport lounges and, all of that. So
Yeah.
I think for me, work-life balance did not exist. It
Yeah.
only came into existence after I relocated here. And I know we talk a lot about it, but I feel like it's it's something that I'm so proud that this country and the culture in this country actually encourages. People
Mhm.
talk about it so openly,
Yeah.
which is not a given with every culture, with every country. So I think
Mhm.
that's definitely something to put into perspective as well.
Yeah.
Um, but for me now, work-life balance, I must be honest, as a business owner, and you know how it is that we do go through our little phases of
Mhm.
where it'll
Mhm.
be absolutely on top, where we've done our, day hours in the day away from the screen, we've done our walks, and we've done all of that, and then there'll be days when it absolutely goes
All
south.
goes out the window.
Yeah, there's this nice calendar entry that keeps popping up, go for a walk, and then you're like, no, I can't,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's a bit of a hit and miss, but as long as I think I'm a lot more mindful about it, so I think that helps. It's
That's a good
intentional
start.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. I've started, I've probably been doing it about maybe 3, 4 months now. I've started waking up earlier,
Mm,
and having the first hour, like before my son wakes up and before, it starts getting light. So I'm awake I have from 5 till probably some mornings I probably get till about 6:30. So 90 minutes to myself.
wow.
Um, but I must say, like, I am pretty much done by about 9:30. I'm absolutely shattered. So but it's really been helping, and like you say, I think what it's allowed me to do is I've always operated at a pace where it's almost like I've been running an emergency services department,
Mm,
because what I do and what you do as well is client facing.
yeah,
I think I get a message from a client at 8 o'clock, I must respond to it.
yeah,
Where I've really changed my kind of reaction attitude and mentality towards that now.
mm,
And I think having that time in the morning really helps with things like that.
yeah, definitely.
But it is tricky sometimes, because sometimes no matter you've got all the best intentions in the world, and it just goes out of the window because, you know, one thing after another just takes over and crops up, and you can't, can you? But
Yeah, and sometimes you've got to forgive yourself for that as well,
yeah,
because then you're just
exactly.
going to make things worse by adding that additional pressure as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think as long as I do a little bit of like a cheat sort of a thing, that if I'm absolutely horrible in one day and I've worked too many hours, I kind of try and take it easy the next few days. The luxury of having your own business is that there is some level of control on your calendar,
Yeah.
how much ever that is possible, really. But then I've become a lot more assertive about my weekends, which I think has really helped me
Mm.
productivity wise. It's really helped me through the week. So I think this whole notion that we've got to stay active and alert and present all the time is
Mm-hmm.
actually counterintuitive to
Yeah,
productivity, to creativity. So,
yeah,
but yeah,
absolutely.
well done you, Sandra, for waking up at 5. I would never be able to do that.
Oh, well, I said that as well. I was like, 5 a.m.? No way, not doing that. Never, ever. Yeah, and never ever
But there
did I
you
think
are.
I'd be sat here saying that I have been doing it for about 4 months. So last question.
Hmm.
I mean, quite a big topic, and it's something that comes up quite regularly. Is a topic and subject around imposter syndrome. It comes up quite frequently particularly within the leadership space and at leadership level,
Yeah.
particularly with women. What are your thoughts on it, and any kind of tips and advice?
I think I have had many moments of feeling like an imposter. I still do.
Mm,
Um, I think the thing with imposter syndrome, and I think I'd seen a video by Stephen Bartlett, or maybe it's written in his book, where he spoke
yeah,
about imposter being actually a really good thing, because that just means that you're pushing yourself. You're
yeah.
pushing
I
yourself.
think it was on one of his podcasts.
Podcast, okay.
I remember listening to it. Yeah,
And I think that really resonated with me, because up until that moment, I was looking at this imposter syndrome as this like little devil sitting on my shoulder and be like, you shouldn't be feeling this, you shouldn't be feeling this. But then when I heard that, I was like, oh, actually, it makes sense, because every time I felt it, I have pushed myself to do something outside of
yeah,
my comfort
yeah,
zone. So I
yeah.
think, in a way, if we can reframe how we look at imposter syndrome, then it potentially might have a more positive impact. I
Mm,
might be a bit of a reassurance that all you're doing is you are allowing yourself to grow. You're
to
allowing
grow. Yeah,
yourself to, create the best possible version of yourself. So I think in that sense, sometimes reframing some of these things can actually make a massive difference in how we perceive things like being an imposter, for
yeah.
example.
Absolutely. I think that's fantastic. That's brilliant. Great bit of advice. And great
Thank
way
you.
to end our discussion today. I really really enjoyed having you on the podcast. I feel like you've really shared some really interesting insights that I'm sure our listeners will come away feeling really inspired, and really kind of give them that comfort that they're not alone, and there are others out there that have experienced the same. And yeah, so thank you very much for your authenticity. Thank you for your time and for coming on the podcast today. If our listeners, viewers, interested in reaching out to you, is LinkedIn probably the best approach for them?
Yeah, definitely. LinkedIn, search me. It's Minoti Parikh. I'm pretty searchable, if that's a word. But yes, I would love to connect with your listeners and with anybody else who is actually, kind of going through a phase of change, rejection. I think it's a constant part of all our lives. So
Yeah,
yes, please feel free to give me a shout. And it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you, Sandra. Thank you for
yeah.
having me.
Oh, no problems. You're welcome. Thanks very much. Take care, Minoti.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers. Bye. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Let's Talk Leadership podcast. I hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as I did. A huge thank you to our guests for sharing their experiences and wisdom. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. It really helps us reach out to more leaders like you. If you're interested in joining me on the podcast or have someone in mind who you think would be a great fit, feel free to reach out and get in touch, as I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep leading with purpose, and remember, leadership is all about learning, growing and giving back. Take care, and I'll see you on the next episode.